Dr. Cyril to do a presentation for us about rethinking cybersecurity. Dr. Cyril is the Director, Enterprise Security Architecture at Person and is also a distinguished speaker of the IEEE Computer Society. Prior to joining Person, he was a Director, Artificial Intelligence, Blockchain and Cybersecurity at Research Services Limited, where he was responsible for directing artificial intelligence, blockchain, and cybersecurity strategies and governance. He had worked in the financial, telecommunication, government, and public service sectors. He's a leading scholar in various areas, for example, cyber situational awareness, cybersecurity, security information and event management, data fusion, intrusion detection systems, and computer network security. Sorry, give me a second. He is knowledgeable in information assurance, security policy frameworks, and risk assessment and management. His current interests include machine learning for cybersecurity, the application of blockchain to cybersecurity, and quantum computing. He holds a PhD in computer network security, an MSc in internet engineering, and a BSc first-class honors in computer science and mathematics. He's also authored several books in these areas. So as I mentioned, we are quite privileged. So Dr. Cyril, welcome. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Kizinji, and thanks everyone that is here today. And things happen, so don't feel disheartened about it, because technologies and things fail, as we will see on this lecture. So hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from today, and welcome again to this distinguished lecture titled Rethinking Cybersecurity Onboarding. As Alex has said, I'm Cyril Onwubiko, so I'm the Director of Enterprise Security Architecture at Pearson. So before we get started, and I am still excited, and I'm excited to be here today, so regardless of the hitches. So a couple of things to mention. So we keep the lecture to an hour, so I'll make sure that I present within 40 to 45 minutes. And then we use the remaining 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A, question and answer. You can post your question and answer using the chat on the WebEx interface, and then I will step through those at the end of the proceeding. Again, the event is recorded, and I will make available the PowerPoint presentation and also the video recording through Kitinji. So you wouldn't miss anything, and I want you to just relax and enjoy the lecture, okay? All right, let's get started. So the agenda, I've prepared this in a way that is easy to follow so that you guys understand what we're trying to do about rethinking cybersecurity onboarding. So the first couple of slides, we'll talk about the benefits and challenges of cybersecurity in general, and then followed by Cybersecurity Operations Center. And then we'll look at the challenges towards cybersecurity onboarding. And then I will propose what I think is the way, rethinking about cybersecurity onboarding, the way that onboarding should be done at pace, simplified, automated, so that organizations and industry can then leverage from it. We'll end with recommendations and conclusion, and finally Q&A. Okay, so all of us here today joined, we have used one of these services. At least we joined in today from our mobile or from our desktops to enjoy this webinar. Without IT, with information technology or ICT, you wouldn't be able to listen to this talk today, because I haven't traveled to Kenya just because we're in a pandemic. We've also used our mobile to do internet banking. We've gone to the health services and leveraged health services. We've used our IoT devices at home. We've done internet banking. We also use critical national infrastructures such as the power, the electricity, and the grid. All of this today is secured using cybersecurity. Without cybersecurity, the vital essential services as you see on this screen wouldn't be possible. They would either be disrupted, compromised, or breached. Therefore, cybersecurity has become pervasive in modern society in our lives, and we use it on a day-to-day basis without even realizing it. Therefore, it's important that we understand the benefit as we use cybersecurity to protect, as guardrails to protect our critical modern society, and is important. But it doesn't come without a challenge. So the benefits are there because modern society now depends on IT services to function. And then on the other hand, there are actors that are there to either breach the service, compromise it, or use it for what is not intended to accomplish. Hence why the challenges. So what are the challenges? There's a number of challenges that we face in cybersecurity. The first thing we face is the challenge as a result of the number of people, personas, and devices that are connected today. According to a report, scientific report, there are over 3.6 billion connected devices and personas on the internet that use it. That sheer volume is challenging to protect. That sheer volume is challenging to guide against and to ensure that the services in which these people, devices access is secure, is protected. And also that these personas and devices are not the bad actors that are using it for unintended consequences. Again, this has exacerbated in various big data type phenomenon where data is now prevalent everywhere. Data is available, whether it is from social media platforms or Internet of Things, the IoT. Therefore, data can be misused or abused. But also, the attack surface has broadened. So we are in a digital age where we use cloud computing to accelerate business uptake and investment. But at the same time, the boundaries are blurred. As we work in the new ways of working because of pandemic, for example, people now work from home, people use their devices to log on, and the boundaries between company infrastructure and home infrastructure is blurred. And we also use consumer networks in our homes to help in our day-to-day activities. But all of these can be susceptible to attack, and either privacy attacking people using our home devices, consumer devices, to either record what we do in a violation of our privacy, or exploit those data for things that we don't intend for them to use it for. Also, some nations also have used cyber as the conduit to exercise dominance and superiority. As we know, there is national elections, and we read a report where some sovereign nations use cyber as a frontier to manipulate national elections, or also carry attacks where they steal national intellectual property rights. So these are some of the challenges that we face in cybersecurity. However, there are various ways to solve it. One way that industry can solve it is to build a cybersecurity operations center. And also the national states also build what we call SAT, Computer Incident Response Teams. These are centers also that protect national investment, national cyber investment. So the cybersecurity operation is a center. It doesn't have to be a physical center, but is a center that allows critical services of a business or of a nation to be protected. So what do we mean by critical services? So they protect surface of any business organization constituted of what we call DAS, the data, the asset, the application, and services of that particular organization. So these are the critical systems that organizations use to foster their business, to reach out to their client, to reach out to their customers, to provide essential services to their customers. Likewise, nation states can also use those systems, computer systems, to provide essential services to their citizens. So it's not just only to organizations. So a cybersecurity operations center is a center that allows an organization or government department or an industry to monitor and protect their critical essential services that allow them to operate a business. But to build those, there are two components. First of all, the services that they own. So DAS, I mentioned DAS, which is the data, the assets, the application and services of that organization needs to be monitored. And that initial preparing those, setting up those configuration of those systems so that they produce the right set of logs or the right set of events or the right set of systems, messages, or the right, what we call telemetry is regarded as onboarding, okay? And the second bit of the Cybersecurity Operations Center is the actual building of the monitoring, the security monitoring dashboard, the security monitoring and event response platforms that they would then leverage in order to monitor this network and services and systems. Therefore, one of the key takeaways for you today is that to build a security operations center, you need two aspects. One is cybersecurity onboarding. So this is a disparate specialist team of people, probably project teams, that prepare ICT information, ICT systems and information and data so that those information and data can report, whether it is an alert or an alarm or message, as you will see in the next slides, that they have been either compromised or attacked or there's an intrusion. Without onboarding those systems, you wouldn't be able to monitor them, okay? There is no silver bullet, there is no magic wand with computer. And then once you've set up those systems, which is called onboarding, to produce the right set of telemetry. Telemetries are metrics or information or messages that allow you then to correlate them and then analyze it in order to find out whether they've been hacked or attacked or compromised or breached. Then you won't be able to monitor it. Once it's been done, then the other bit is the monitoring aspect, okay? We can colloquially call them eyes on glass because most times they see 24/7 or 7/7 or however the timeline is, monitoring the dashboards, monitoring the information that these systems bring out, send to them or alert to them. So the two takeaway to build a cyber operations center, you need security onboarding. You need the services to be onboarded, and then in those services, the events produced by those services need to be monitored. So here is a simple example of what a simple security monitoring looks like. So on the right side is the protect surface. Go on mute, please, if you're not speaking. Can you go on mute, please? So on the right-hand side is the protect surface of organization. So these are the DAS, the data, the assets, applications, and the services that the organization has. And they are configured by the onboarding team to produce events and logs and metrics. And these are the things that are monitored on the left-hand side using the dashboard. And in that dashboard, you can see the metrics, the threats that want to exploit those services, the vulnerabilities that might be constituted either in the collaterals that are used to monitor and protect those services, or the assets themselves might be vulnerable to certain attack. And this may constitute a risk. So this, in a nutshell, depicts what a cybersecurity monitoring looks like. I will then take you through the functional aspects. So for the SOC, this is a representation of what a security operations center looks like as a function. So in the middle, this is the SOC, but they comprise of people. So there are two types of people. So the cyber monitoring and incident response and management people. So these are like the SOC managers, the SOC analysts, the incident responders, the threat hunters. And then on the left-hand side is the cyber onboarding team. These are the teams that actually set up those systems to produce the right set of telemetrics, the right set of events and information that then are monitored by the cyber operation center team. But then they leverage processes. So processes like incident management playbook, things like a run book to expedite their response to an incident. Without mature processes, then they will lag in time in providing real-time or even near real-time or proactive response. But also, they then need technology to help them automate these responses that they would provide. They need technology to correlate those disparate information from myriads of different assets, different DAS, data, application, assets, and services, so that they can then respond to an incident or to a data breach when it occurs. So because today's talk is mainly focusing on cyber onboarding, cybersecurity onboarding, that is the bit we're going to focus much more today. So cyber onboarding, as I explained, constitutes a number of different activities that the team does in order to provide the right set of metrics to the cybersecurity operations center people to monitor those assets, or DAS, the data, asset, applications, and services. So the first thing they do is they do a discovery, and then they find out what is it that the organization wants us to onboard. So this will comprise the DAS, the data, the application, the asset, and the services. And the first thing they do is, what are the ingestion mechanisms? How can we configure those servers or those systems to produce the right set of logs that would then become symptomatic or indicate when there is an attack? The ingestion mechanisms are many. There are different types based on the type of asset, the type of operating system is running. So it could actually be a flow. So flow information is sent from the server to the monitoring guy. It could also be information sent in the form of syslog. It could be the asset requires a third-party agent to be installed so that the information could then be sent to the SOC, or it could be through an API interface. API is an application programming interface that allows, whether it's REST API or SOAP API, whatever type it is, that allows those information that are symptomatic of an attack or a compromise are sent to the SOC to monitor. The onboarding team also would design the network. They could produce a number of artifacts as part of the design solution in order to onboard those assets to the SOC. These could be architecture patterns, network connectivity designs, or solution design. The other thing they do also, they create what we call content development. So they create rules and use cases. For example, an organization like a bank that deals with credit card, one of the use cases might be to produce a monitoring use case that will flag when a particular credit card has been used to make a purchase outside a particular geography. So if it's a business that deals with a particular geography, say, for example, you guys are in Kenya, and that card is used to make purchases where it hasn't been done before in any geography, that use case will flag that there has been a transaction from this particular credit card to a particular e-commerce site, and that's been used. It could also be a national SOC, and their use case is interested in whether a particular social insurance number or national insurance number have been used to claim a citizen's service, and this could constitute a type of use case. Another type of use case could also be when a national passport has been resold in the black market, and the use case would be, if that particular scenario happens, then flag it to these guys to monitor. So there are a number of use cases depending on the business requirement of that business, and all of these are then designed. They also, part of the content development is also to design the dashboard where these alerts and alarms are reported, so that it's easier for the SOC to visualize the alerts that have been sent to them in a dashboard form, as we saw earlier in my slide. And the other thing they do, depending on the size of the enterprise, is also to create tagging. A tagging mechanism is a way of associating a particular metadata to a unit. So if an organization has multiple units, so you have the HR, you have the R&D, you have the sales team, you have engineering team. You could also create tags. Tags are simple identifier to say, okay, this particular asset belongs to HR and this other asset belongs to the engineering team, so that if an incident happens, it's easy to isolate whether it is a HR system that's been compromised or an engineering system to compromise. So onboarding will create this tagging framework too. The other thing they do is that once the system is designed and all of these contents are developed, they would then implement it and they will test it. And then they also need to create reports. They create report template that allows the SOC to run reports and also to evidence return on investment, because how efficient that security operations center is may be dependent on monitoring on certain KPI. It could well be how many assets that's been onboarded, and it could well be how many breaches they had in a particular month or in a particular year or a quarter of a year. So these are the activities that the onboarding do. And as you would agree, it's quite onerous. So what we did, this was a research we did last year, is we have had various people report that their cyber onboarding hasn't been as effective as it is. So what we did as part of this research is to interview the various people that were involved. And the methodology we use is called Reframing Metrics. So Reframing Metrics is a simple methodology that allows you to understand an organizational problem. So it's not only applicable to cyber onboarding or cybersecurity. It's a methodology you can use to carry out research in an organization that has a problem. So when we did this thing, we wanted to find out why is onboarding broken, for example? Why is it not being efficient? Why is it lacking efficacy? Why are they taking time to onboard services and for Cybersecurity Operations Center to become very efficient? Based on this model, for you to understand the organizational problem, you need to, have a stakeholder community that the problem impacts. So that's what one of the main goals of Reframing Metrics. In order to understand what the problem that lies with onboarding, we had to interview various stakeholder communities. So the first people we identified were the SOC themselves, the security or cybersecurity operations center themselves. The other people who identified in order to understand the problem and why this is not working is the team that carries out that function called cyber onboarding. And the other people we identify is the clients that use it. So the various teams like the HR team, the finance team, the engineering team, all of those are called our customer area that use that service. They use the SOC. We interviewed them, and then we interviewed the leaders of that organization. These are called the senior management team. And that's what you see in each quadrant, so that we can start to understand the problem and therefore provide the right solution. So when we interviewed the client, so these disparate teams that use the service, like the HR, the finance team, the engineering team, one of the things they outlined or the things that didn't work well for them is that there's lack of funding, to provide their assets to be monitored, and that also the funding model isn't the right one, because for the organizations we spoke to, the funding model was dependent on who had the funds to put their assets into monitoring. Then the SOC would then, the onboarding team would onboard it, and then the SOC would monitor it. Whereas if we had put it based on risk prioritization, which asset has the highest risk in terms of, is it vulnerable, is it running obsolete systems, is it out of support, then it would have been a different type of engagement rather than based on funding for the individual units. Then we interviewed, and again, the other thing they highlighted is also it's time consuming, because as we saw, there are various activities that onboarding team do in order to onboard one system to monitoring. It's a nightmare because it's quite detailed and so it takes a long time. Therefore, they also highlighted that it's time consuming to onboard. We then spoke to the senior management team, and one of the things they mentioned to us is that it's too expensive and inconvenient to fund the onboarding. And the reason is because onboarding process is quite humongous. It's a lot and it's lengthy. Therefore, if you're paying these people on a time and effort basis, it's a lot of money to spend in order to provide the right set of security monitoring. And they also highlighted there's lack of clarity in terms of when does a system onboarding complete? Is it when the logs are configured, when the assets are configured to produce the right set of logs, or when the contents are developed, or when the dashboard is created, or when the report templates are created? See, they weren't clear that, at what point does it start and at what point does it finishes. So again, the governance and structure for the onboarding team, they highlight is as some of their challenges and concerns they have for cyber onboarding. Then we interviewed cyber onboarding to have their own view in terms of what they think is broken. As you would expect, one of the things they highlighted to us is that the senior management team hasn't given them their support. There is lack of support from senior management, therefore, most people do not listen to them and they don't obey them, and people do not comply. So one other thing they also said is that they felt that the Cyber Operations Center people are not mature in their processes, and also that people there are not trained, and they could do a lot more in terms of knowledge acquisition. So they also owned up to say that onboarding as a process is complex, and there are so many issues with that. So it's lengthy. They need a simplified model, a simplified way of thinking, a simplified way of onboarding services to the SOC. Then we interviewed the SOC, and this is SOC of many organizations, government and industry. So it wasn't just a candidate. We interviewed various people in this. So then we spoke to the SOC, and they said because the onboarding is taking long to onboard a device, therefore they have few things to monitor. So they could be monitoring one asset for 6 months before they onboard another asset. And they also highlighted the quality of the logs that these guys configure for them is poor. So it may not be tagged properly, so something could happen and you think it's a HR system, whereas it's a finance system, or it's not finance system, it's R&D system or engineering system. They also say that some of the information that are produced are not right, i.e. there is no proper documentation to understand what this asset is, whether it's a Windows asset or a Unix asset, or whether this asset is a server or a database, or whether it's a mobile or a laptop, all of this. And they said they had many dashboards here and there. So they needed the consolidation. They needed those assets to consolidate. So we then took this on board. And this is why this talk today is titled Rethinking Cybersecurity Onboarding. As you guys could see, it's broken. So this is what the current model looks like. So the onboarding, they start with the discovery workshop. Then within the discovery, they identify the assets that need to be onboarded. They look at the requirements, monitoring requirement. Then they create incident playbook. Then they do a design. They implement, they test. They are normal things, but it's still linear. It's very linear, and it's very time consuming. It takes a minimum of 6 months to onboard a type of asset. And it can take as much as 36 months up to 3 years to complete, depending on the size of the enterprise, okay? And it's very process intensive. There's a number of things here that you would agree with me that they do. And doesn't mean those things are not right, but it's just the application of how they do it is not quite right. And again, it's waterfall and very onerous. So what we then propose is this. So we propose a different approach to what exists today. So the approach we propose is very cyclic, or cyclic as you would pronounce. So in the sense where the discovery, the design, the code, the SOA, the test are all in code, yeah? So you codify this so that you can instantiate these at the click of a mouse. And this that's supposed to take 3 to 36 months can take days, can take 2 days to a day for you to orchestrate this, automate this, and then deploy this in one go. It will take maximum weeks rather than months or years. Again, everything is automated and it's agile. It's straightforward rather than waterfall. You finish this before you start this. No, everything is, all you see here is in code. So it's like infrastructure in code. And then you have the templates, you codify it, you instantiate it, you deploy it. All of what we talked about all of the various stages can be done at the click of a mouse of a button. So this is a typical example. This was the same network I showed you before, the Security Operations Center network. The things that is the protect surface. Protect surface is the DAS, the data, the application, the asset and services of organization they want to protect, they want to monitor. And that's what you see in the middle there. All of these can be created in code. So whether it is the server build, the third-party applications that need to be installed, the plugin that it needs to install on the server, the API that it needs to be spoken to can be codified in a template and in a stack. Once it's codified in a template and in a stack, you can instantiate that activity and it will deploy all of these assets for you at the click of a mouse of a button. One way of doing that, you can use an open source called Terraform, for example. If you are in cloud-hosted data center, for example, Amazon Web Services, you can use Amazon CloudFormation to codify this and instantiate that. And here is an example how we've done that. So all of the network you see in here, we can instantiate these in template and in stack and stack formation. The stack sets can be automated so that once I click a button, I can deploy my DNS and code. I can deploy my data servers and Windows servers that I need to protect and my AD, and then all the events are reported in events and logs repository, which I can then monitor. I can do that again in another region if I need to. And then all of this is instantiated and codified straight away, like infrastructure and code. And then the dashboard can be set up so that all of these protect surface, the DAS, are being, the events that are produced there are reported on the dashboard for the SOC to operate. And the good thing, right, is if I needed another region to spin up another region to monitor, because I have this template already that exists in code, I can instantiate that in less than a couple of days, and the whole thing is now set up in monitoring. So, right, this is really important, and this is fundamental. So all of the things that have taken months and years to do, we can change that in days and in weeks, depending on the size of the enterprise anyway. So here are our recommendations. For you to do a security operations center properly, you need to have a strategy, okay? So what we mean by MOSCO here is a framework to prioritize what we do. So the must, the should, the could, and the would. So the first thing we identified that is missing that we need to do is to have a strategy. And the SOC strategy should be a part of a component of the enterprise strategy, business strategy. The next thing is that it needs to have value. So the SOC should provide value to the business. Therefore, it's supposed to support the strategy that the organization has created. The SOC should have a structure. So the team leads, the manager, but also through to their CISO or through to their chief information officer. So there needs to be that, and it needs to be aligned. It needs to align to business rather than sit aside the business. So it's supposed to support the business function. Again, you cannot monitor every single asset of an organization. It can do, but it's challenging. Therefore, to demonstrate investment quite quickly, you need to prioritize. Again, the same thing applies to risk. You have to prioritize based on risk of the organization. So the prioritization then determine which assets you prioritize first to onboard and what comes next, what candidate comes third and fourth. And this should be based on risk prioritization rather than investment on who has the money to put the asset through monitoring. Again, Cybersecurity Operations Center is an investment, and therefore you should demonstrate investment. And one way to demonstrate investment is to demonstrate what we call return on cybersecurity investment. What are the KPIs that you will report against that shows that the SOC is providing value to the organizations? It could well be the number of attacks they foiled. It could also be the number of data breaches that they detected before it happens. It could also be how quickly they shrink the window of observing those things to when it materializes. It could also be adherence and compliance to government directives. So in conclusion, here are some of the key takeaways. I regard these ones as the soft skills takeaways. The first thing is that a SOC should Every organization should have one, depending on the size. It doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to be a building, so they can work remotely, but they would have to monitor the organization critical assets. If you want to provide value and start and be relevant in modern society, and you're using digital, you need to have a mechanism to understand the risk you bear, to mitigate those risks proactively, and also minimize breaches to your critical assets. Also, there are key drivers to SOC. So some of the key drivers are, fulfilling business requirement of the organization or nation state. If you're providing this to the government, it needs to be driven by their requirement to safeguard citizens. If you're doing it for an organization, it might be to provide value to their client, to their customers, but also is a security and compliance requirement at the same time. So these are the three key drivers: is fulfilling business requirement, security, and compliance. To build a SOC does take time. So the organization needs to be patient that to develop an efficient SOC would require, as we saw before, creating those reusable artifacts, creating the playbook that they would use, having a run book in case an incident happens, and making sure that these are available for them to use should they need it. Again, they need leadership support. The organization would have, the senior management team would have to support their investment in cyber for it to take again. And finally, on this aspect, you need to train your staff. You need to train the SOC staff. If they're equipped and they're developed, then they will provide you the right set of a SOC. A SOC is efficient and functional. And again, that's where the efficacy comes to play. And the technical takeaway in terms of conclusion is that automate where possible. So ensure that you automate your cyber threat intel into your SIEM. SIEM is the Security Information and Event Management, so that the threat intel you see outside is automated into your SIEM, and therefore, before those events, before those attacks happen or the threat is realized in the environment, you're aware of it and you apply the right measures, the right controls, the right guardrails before it happens. Automate your processes so that you can, mean time to respond becomes shortened, and you can respond quite quickly, almost in real time, or at least near real time. Do carry out continuous vulnerability assessment, understand your exposures, understand your attack compromise path, understand codes that are no longer functional and that needs to either be decommed or removed and managed. Use as much as possible, leverage the power of AI and machine learning for predictive analytics, which is important. You don't have to wait for an asset to be compromised before you can start to predict or also understand the likelihood of that being compromised. Automate your incident response. And of course, things will go wrong, as we saw with starting the webinar this afternoon. It didn't go as we planned. And then what happens? You then go back to recovery. What did we do? We went back and asked for another code. So that is one important thing that you need to do, is things will go wrong. And if you do go, have a backup plan. Fall back to your cyber resilience and cyber recovery capability. With that, I would like to thank you. So here are the references to the things I've used. And I would like to thank the organizers of this distinguished lecture today. So I would like to thank the IEEE Kenya section for their good work inviting us to present today. I would like to thank the IEEE Young Professionals, the Kenya section, and also the IEEE Computer Society, who am their DVP, which is the Distinguished Visitors Program. And last but not the least, I would like to thank the IEEE Young Professionals region, IEEE Region 8, comprising Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I would like to thank especially to Vincent Egasa, the IEEE Kenya Section Chair. I would like to thank Mr. Kitingi Muringi, who is the Young Professional Chair for Kenya Section. And also special thanks to Martha Charlton, who created a wonderful flyer and made sure the publicity. And of course, to Alex, who briefed you guys about myself today. So with this, I would like to take questions, but also my contact is there. So if you need to contact me, and please follow me on Twitter. Here is my Twitter handle. And the other one is my personal website. My contact is on the screen. So I would like to take your questions, please.
Thank you, Dr. Cyril. I don't know if anyone had already sent your question on chat.
I'm looking now.
So maybe as we wait, our chairperson for Kenya section is here. Maybe Vincent can say hello to the participants as people get warmed up to ask their questions. I don't know, Vincent, if you're still on.
Alex, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Maybe greet the participants as they think of the questions they would like to ask. Vincent, you can go ahead.
Morning. My name is Alex. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Wanted to kind of commend the presenter, Cyril Onwubiko. Both of us actually went to school. I don't know if he still remembers me. My name is Alex Ogo. I was in electrical while he was in computer science.
Yes, I do.
You do? Awesome. Awesome. I just wanted to say very good delivery. I think this is good. It kind of takes people off the traditional waterfall method of looking through cybersecurity, you know, setting up a SOC to a more agile approach. So this was a good delivery. And I wanted to just commend Cyril on the good presentation.
Thank you very much, Alex. And I would like to use this opportunity to emphasize. So I have been working in the cybersecurity world now for at least 12 years. And I've worked both in government department and also in industry. So, and I have set up many SOCs in my life, at least 3 or 4 of those, and big SOCs. So, as Alex said, it's easy to fall to the same old world of, oh, we need to do a design, and you wait for 3 months, design is produced, and then we test that, and we then go live. It's like ceremonies and pillars, you know. But in the new world, all of those things are important. Those components are important. So I'm not saying you negate design, but all of your design can be in code. They can be templated, and then you can instantiate those servers in one go. And the question is, all right, Cyril, it's good if it's a new server you're building. No. What if it's an existing server? Now, the answer is, for those existing servers, what we call the brown field or the red field, you would identify what is their ingestion mechanism. How would they produce logs and event to you? Assuming it's syslog, okay? You can automate the configuration of those syslog and automate where they will send those logs to. So they will send it to the central repository where your SIEM, Security Information and Event Manager, is, and it picks it. So it doesn't have to be new assets. It can be existing asset. You can still automate existing asset to produce the right set of log. That asset, again, may require you to install a new software, like a new parser. You can also install those new parser on existing asset by automating it. You don't have to wait till you go through that waterfall model. You can automate a group of assets and schedule that automation, which you've already tested in a test environment, and you have confidence, so you can then deploy them automatically. That would leverage the time to lead, the time for you to deploy that. That would also shrink how quickly you go to market, i.e. you move from test to production. And that's what we advocate. But the thing is also knowing that you can bring all of this in code and do that in code. But also you can automate them and test them and have fidelity in what you're deploying in production. Okay, it's fundamental, right?
I totally agree. Totally agree. Processes that can be repeated should be repeated. It's against, going through that very rigid, linear, design, test, implement, that's a rigorous cycle. And it makes it easy for the business to be, agile to business changes, changing requirements. Yeah, the agility you build into this is awesome. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, Cecilia is curious how machine learning and artificial intelligence can be leveraged for cybersecurity, especially in setting up a SOC within a startup environment.
All right. Thank you very much, Cecilia. That's a very interesting question. So I would answer that with a number of use cases. So the first use case is we know that machines are faster and quicker for repetitive tasks than us. And that's why we also automate, okay? So imagine going to 6, 7 servers and taking their logs and putting those together, maybe using Excel to put the columns, and then it will lag in time. You can never be near real time, let alone be real time. So with AI identifies different patterns. So assuming you are in a situation where you work in a SOC for a bank, and you know that the credit card number says a 16-digit, there are machine learning tools today that would crawl through terabytes of data to look at the pattern of usage of a particular credit card. There are machine learning models today that would go through not just identifying pattern matching, identifying the pattern of that, but also looking at the behavior, symptomatic behavior, behavioral analytics, which we don't. So these are areas you can use machine learning for. So also machine learning can also allow you to explore your exposure rate. So you go on a cloud, for example, and you instantiate the service. So if I use an Amazon Web Services, for example, there's what we call S3, Simple Storage Server. That's a repository where you keep your data. You could actually make it public without you knowing that it's public. And imagine if you work in a multi-cloud environment where you have various assets and but different cloud environment. You can deploy machine learning models today to say, okay, what is my exposure? What are the things that I have set up wrongly that that I don't know about? And the machine learning model will go and flag it and then bring that to your attention. It doesn't also have to be things that you know. So for example, you can have a situation where you have big data sitting in one place, and these are terabytes of data or even petabytes of data. You can deploy your ML model to crawl through those things and flag out what your users are doing, what your users are interested to. So it's not just even from a tax standpoint, but also you can turn it to an investment to say, okay, what are we doing better? So that we can then leverage on that and provide that quite quickly. So in answering Cecilia's question, we use that in predictive analytics. So where we can predict things that hasn't happened. We use that in pattern matching. We use that in behavioral analytics. So these are some of the areas we use it. And in wider AI, because ML is a subset of AI, and this is my area. So we also use it in computer vision. So where we look at things like imagery, especially with the dashboards, and you then start to look at those computer vision type area to see symptomatically what else could have gone wrong. And there are various applications we use it into. You can also use it for compliance, like GDPR type compliance with privacy. So there are areas we use it today, and it's only going to get better in future because there are quite a number of other use cases you can apply AI and ML to. Well, even with deep learning and reinforcement learning, these are some of the new approaches and branches of AI that we look in the future to use. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. There are 2 comments. People were quite happy with the lectures. Someone wants to recheck the security of his current systems. And people have learned a lot about cybersecurity onboarding. As people are thinking of questions, one question came to mind is, I did not hear you talking about departments. Does this sit in IT? Where does it sit? You mentioned a bit about governance, but who is a person to be held accountable for this role? Is it IT? Is it who in the organization is responsible?
Thanks, Alex. This is very, very important. And many people would differ with my opinion, but having worked in this area for a long time, I will give you what I think anecdotally, my opinion. My opinion is a SOC is a business function, okay? It's not an IT function, it's not an IT responsibility. They perform IT duties, but it's a business function. This should sit within a Chief Information Security Office. It should sit within the CIO office, Chief Information Officer's office, but it's a business function. It's supposed to render business, it's supposed to use it as a lever, okay, for protecting your intellectual digital property. It's supposed to use it to gain insights into your customers and therefore provide the right set of information to them as quickly as they need it. You should also then use it to protect your own infrastructure and intellectual power. Therefore, it is a business function. It needs to enable business. It's an accelerator, okay? People used to think, oh, it's only an IT thing. No, it's not an IT thing. It's a business function. That's my opinion. I've written an article about this, and it's quite well received. It is actually a business function.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I don't know if there's any other question. Don't be left out. If you have something you've always wanted to know, this is a good opportunity.
So, Alex, I just have a follow-up question to what Cecilia was asking regarding the in line with the startup kind of a thinking, because I've seen the graph is very big with the people, processes, technology, and all these. Maybe from your point of view, from a startup where maybe they are starting something up and they are building all these, and maybe due to the nature of startups, you happen to find that they have very few, there's that limitation, or rather there's a limited manpower. How many maybe, or rather what is the minimum number do you think they should invest in terms of capital, or rather in terms of even the people themselves, resources and everything? Like yeah.
Okay, thanks, Kitinji. I understand you very well. The first thing we do, this is why we do that discovery workshop. The first thing we do is to do a discovery workshop. So imagine a startup, you only have 2 employees or 2 staff, whether they are not, the term I use as staff is, it could also be contracting or contingent labor. So let's assume that the overall number of people in the organization is only 5, and they probably have only one central database and a simple network, and everybody bring their own device. The first thing you then do is, what is the critical asset for this organization? It could well be just that central database. So that's where you apply the most protection against. So you ask yourself, who accesses it? What is their ID? What did they access it for? Do they have the least privilege to access it? What can they destroy? Then you look at external. Who would access that? Is it my customers or my client? Maybe that is only for you guys internal to access and use to do your day-to-day activities. If there is no external connectivity to it, there is no need for exposing it to the wider world because they don't need it. So that's where you start. You start with, what is the requirement? Why do I need what, and what do I need to secure? Remember I talked about the protect surface. The protect surface is your DAS, the data, the assets, the application, and the service. With this startup, the asset they have and the data they have is one component. Remember, you can have one asset but has different components. So the one component is that's where the data is, okay? And that's that single server. Therefore, all you need to do is to protect that single device, that single entity. That's all you need to do. And one way of protecting it is making sure that you know who can access it, and why they're accessing it and from where. Okay, and that's how you then build your monitoring around it. So if, for example, one use case would be no one can access it. Therefore, if you monitor it and you see external access coming from outside the 5 of you, then that's a problem. That is an outlier. Then you would investigate it. If you got in one day and you find out that a particular user have logged on 4 or 5 times and they couldn't log on, that's something to investigate. Why they're logging on. Let's assume that there is no outbound access 5 p.m. your local time to that server. You guys do 7 to 7, and somebody is accessing it at odd hours of the day from an unknown device. Then that's something to investigate. So this is how you build. You don't have to do all of the the various aspects of the workflow that I've presented to you, because you are just a startup and all you need to protect is one asset, as opposed to somebody running tens and thousands of assets in their enterprise. Does it help? Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. There is another question from Lamek. He asks, as a student interested in getting into cybersecurity space, what certifications would you advise one to start off with to understand the cyberspace more holistically and a way to develop their credentials and competence? He's only aware of CISSP.
Okay, thanks, Lamek. That's a good question. CISSP is a good foundational. In fact, it's not just foundational, but also provides a good insight. So it's a good certification to hold, because it will broaden you all of the various domains. So one thing you need to understand is cybersecurity is a science in its own right. It stems from computer science, okay? So it has various domains. So it has policy domain, it has law, it has governance, it has risk assessment, it has what we call the protection aspects, detection, response, recovery, various aspects. So what I would suggest is that if you did your CISSP and you looked at the various domains, they can then specialize, choose one domain to specialize. So it could also be cryptography and key management, for example, and you do that. It could also be monitoring and cybersecurity monitoring, where you do things with IDS, IPS, and you specialize in that. Or you look more broadly into the cloud cybersecurity certifications, because the new world now is exposing everyone, and most people are using cloud in their development and in their hosting. So I think CISSP is a good start, but there's also the thing with certification. Whilst it's presenting you with a view, I would also advise that you read widely. There's a lot of literature that would provide you insight into what cybersecurity is, and I can ping you some of those references, just so that at least you have a broader picture of what it is, as opposed to just having a certification, which is sometimes can be quite limited in terms of view.
Okay, thank you for that response. I don't know if there's any other question. I think we are past the 1 hour you had promised us. Victor, I don't know if you can now give your comments. Vincent, sorry. Vincent.
Hi, I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so apologies. I'm a little mobile at the moment, so my network has been a bit jumpy. However, I've followed through the presentation, and Dr. Cyril, this is a great presentation, and I think this is a great start to helping us revamp, particularly our computer society in Kenya. To begin with, I'd really like to thank everybody for attending. I know in this day and age, space and time to attend virtual events is really complex and really constrained. And it's really great that you have all Dr. Cyril, thank you for taking time to prepare and host and this great topic to us. It's actually a very topical topic at the moment in Kenya. I'm sure the guys on the ground know what I'm talking about. So I'm sure it'll create a lot of interesting discussions after this. We really appreciate you taking your time. We really appreciate you staying with us even after the heat. And I mean, I guess that's what technology is about, being able to respond to the need and getting a result at the end of it. And I dare say that we've gotten great result from this lecture alone. So I don't want to take too much time, just to thank you all for making this event successful. And I'm really looking forward to seeing us hosting another event. And I'm sure this goes a long way in getting better participation and more participation from our young professionals, and also getting our computer society going in a growth direction. Alex, thank you for helping. And I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And thank everyone for good comments. As I said, the event is recorded, and I will share my slides also alongside with the recording so that you have everything you need. And as Vincent has said, Kitinji and I had also discussed that we want to see this continue. So hopefully I may be invited again to present other of my research work with you guys, which I hope would be fascinating equally, but also insightful in this space. But I also want to share that we also run a cyber science conference. Is on the slide, but again, is part of the pack that I will share. It's going to be virtual the next year because of the pandemic, but it's also hosted by the Dublin City University in Ireland. The call for paper is open. I think it closes early next year. All the details you need will be in the pack as I send it. So I hope that you guys can share it widely within your section and all of your peers. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for hosting me. And speak soon.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cyril. So I'll hand over the meeting back to Kitinji.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cyril, for this amazing presentation. I think it has turned out to be one of the most fruitful discussions that we have ever had in line with cyber security and trying to break it down to the level where everybody can understand. It's very massive content, but you have put it in a manner that everyone is actually appreciating the content, very detailed and very precise. So I don't know if Chaltu is on call. I wanted her to do the honors to close the session because I can see Chaltu. Can you hear me? I needed you to do the honors to close the session. Yeah. All right.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Chaltu, loud and clear.
Great. Yeah, so thank you so much, Kitinji, for organizing for this. It's been a really insightful session. I'm sorry I got onto the link a bit later on, but at least I was able to catch up onto it. And like you've said, this has been the way Dr. Cyril, you presented the presentation, you put it in such a way that it was easy to understand. And I mean, it's been an insightful session. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for joining us today. And for all those who've joined today, I'm sure all of us have come out of here with one or two things. we've learned quite a lot. So thank you so much. And I believe we'll have more of this. This is our first with you, but we'll definitely have more. We were really happy with how you also pushed for the event, even on the online platforms. As we go ahead, we'll make sure that we keep engaging in the online world also. So thank you so much all. I think with that, we'll close off.
Thank you for having me, and I hope to come back again. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.